karibuni sana katika lesson yetu ya leo, lesson 6, Swahili verbs. Lesson 6, Swahili verbs, vitendo, verbs, vitendo, verbs. So by the end of today's lesson, let's have a look at some of the learning outcomes that we should have. Number 1, learn Swahili basic verbs. So we're going to start looking at some common verbs that we have, and then after that, we should be able to learn the rules of working with verbs. The rules of working with verbs. Are they Bantu? Are they Arabic? So those are very important rules. Are they monosyllabic? Are they disyllabic? Do they have suffixes? So that's a very important thing that we'll be looking at today. So let's look at Swahili verbs. Number 1 thing, all Swahili verbs are presented in the infinitive. So the infinitive is the word to in English, which translates to ku in Swahili. So you'll see Swahili verbs starting with ku, for example, kuenda, to go, kufanya, to do, kufika, to arrive. So that's very important to know. But rule number 2 that you're going to be looking at is that the infinitive ku is normally dropped when you're constructing sentences. So when you have long verbs when you're constructing sentences, that ku, you will not find it. But there's some exceptions, and one exception here which is very important for monosyllabic verbs. Monosyllabic verbs, which we'll be looking at a little bit later, are verbs which are very short. For example, 4-letter verbs, or you can say 2-syllables verbs. Those verbs, they retain their infinitive ku when you're constructing a sentence. For example, ninakula, I am eating. This is because the word kula, or the word to eat, is kula, so the verb exists with the infinitive ku. Very important thing to know is that Swahili verbs, they have very important suffixes, and the suffix, they let us know whether it is an Arabic verb or a Bantu verb. Bantu verbs, they have the suffix a on them, whereas Arabic verbs, they end with the letters e, or the vowels e, or u. Very important to note that Bantu verbs, which form a majority of verbs in Kiswahili, they end with the suffix a. But Arabic verbs, they end with the suffixes e, or u. For example, we have kufanya, that is a Bantu verb, but we have the verb kusafiri, which is an Arabic verb. So one thing I want you to pick up from this is that Swahili verbs are presented in the infinitive. The infinitive is ku, which means to. For example, kuenda, kufanya, kufika. When constructing sentences with long verbs, you drop the ku. For example, this is a long verb, kufanya, so that will be dropped. But if you have very short verbs, for example, kula, you're going to keep that ku in a sentence. For example, ninakula, I am eating. We also have Bantu verbs which end with the a, the suffixes a, but we have also some other verbs which are called the Arabic verbs, which end with the suffixes e, or e, or u. I'll be looking at that shortly. So Bantu verbs. So Bantu verbs, we have said that they end with the suffix a, and they form a majority of verbs in Kiswahili. So they are also the native people's verbs. So they were there. Very important things to know there. They end with an a. They form a majority of verbs in Kiswahili, and they are the native verbs. We have, for example, to sleep, kulala. It's ending with an a. Very important to know that. To cook, kupika. Can I hear your pronunciation on that verb? Your turn. Kupika. Go, to go. Your turn. Kuenda. Can I hear your pronunciation? Your turn. Kuenda. To love or like. The verb to love or like is the same in Kiswahili, which is your turn. Kupenda. Can I hear your pronunciation again on that verb? Kupenda. To do. Kwa Kiswahili. To do. Kwa Kiswahili. Kufanya. Your turn. Kufanya. So all these verbs, you can see they are ending with the suffixes a, hence they are Bantu verbs. Very important to know that kwa Kiswahili, because you will be working with a lot of verbs kwa Kiswahili. The other category of verbs that I wanted us to have a look at are the Arabic verbs. And Arabic verbs in Kiswahili, they end with the suffixes e, I, or u kwa Kiswahili. And very important, they come from the Arabic origin, and we're going to be looking at some of these verbs. The first verb is to forgive. To forgive. Kusamehe. Can you try and pronounce this? Your turn. Kusamehe. Very well done. Vizuri sana. To try. Kwa Kiswahili. To try. Kujaribu. Can you try and pronounce that? Your turn. Kujaribu. To be happy. Kwa Kiswahili. Kufurahi. Kufurahi. To be happy. To return. Kwa Kiswahili. Can you try and pronounce that? Your turn. Kurudi. Asante sana. And the last verb is to travel. A very common verb. Kusafiri. Kusafiri. Remember, not safari, it's safiri. Kusafiri is the verb. Safari is the journey. Well done. So, what are the monosyllabic verbs that I mentioned earlier? What are they in Kiswahili? Monosyllabic verbs, they have 2 syllables. They have 2 syllables. I called them the short verbs. And the stems are very important, because if you drop a verb, if you, let's have a look at this verb, kula. If you split this verb into 2, ku-la, into 2 syllables, ku, that is the first syllable, and then la, that is the second syllable. To eat, kula, it has 2 syllables, Swahili. That's very important, so that's a monosyllabic verb. So they keep the infinitive ku, even when you're constructing sentences. For example, I am eating a burger. Ninakula burger. I want you to go and think, what? Burger? Yeah, burger, burger. That's how we would write it in Kiswahili. We have another verb, come. How would we say that in Kiswahili? Kuja. Very important. Kuja, 2-syllable verb. Ku and ja. You can see it is a 4-letter word, verb, so it's a monosyllabic verb. We also have another verb here, to drink. And this one will be a good one, because it doesn't have 4 letters, but it's a monosyllabic verb. How do we say that in Kiswahili? Kunywa. Can you try and pronounce that? Kunywa. Well done. Fantastic. Good work on that. Let's have a look at some examples of common Swahili verbs that you'll be coming across in the next lesson, but today we want to learn them. Let's have a look at the first one. To be tired. Kuchoka. Can you try and pronounce that? Your turn. Kuchoka. To like or to love. We did that a little bit earlier, but I want to see if you can remember. Got you. Kupenda. To like or love. Then we have to do laundry. Kufua. To do laundry. Kufua. To go. We did that a little bit. Got you. Can you try and pronounce that? Kuenda. To speak or say something. Kuongea. Can you try and pronounce that? Kuongea. To run. Kukimbia. Can you try and say that? Your turn. Very well done. To come. Kuja. Can you try and pronounce that? kuja, a monosyllabic verb there. And the last verb, to cook. Kupika. There you go. Kupika. Those are some of the common verbs that we have in Kiswahili, which we'll be using in our next lesson. So for now, I want you to enjoy learning them. So make sure that you watch the common verbs video that is following up and learn as many videos as you can. They will be very, very important in terms of constructing sentences, which will be our next lesson. Asanteni sana. Kwaheri.